there. Welcome everyone to the Business Bookcase author interview with Jane Harders, who is the author of our February book of the month, Coaching the Crosswind. Welcome, Jane. Nice to see you. Hope February is proving to be a Valentine type month for you. We're basically going to have a chat about your book, and I can see you've got it up on a shelf behind you, and I'm holding a copy here as well, if that's, I don't know if that's visible on my camera, possibly not. I have to say, I loved the layout of the book. It's bright and engaging, and the style of actually the printing, questions, little text boxes, little diagrams, pictures, actually makes it quite easy to read. And it's not a thick book, so I doubly recommend the read. I got a lot out of it, and I hope the audience will too. So I'm going to start off, Jane. You've obviously been a coach, and you've also been coaching coaches for a long time. What prompted this book, and why now?
Oh, what a great question, Ruth. Thank you. So yes, I am a coach, and I spend 100% of my time, if I'm not coaching my own clients, I'm developing other coaches, or I'm doing what we call supervising experienced coaches. And so it came from it was sparked by a number of things, really. So firstly, as a developer of other coaches, I was drawing on other people's published works and to support their learning. And over the years, I'd become so frustrated by the number of really big authors who were and big works which says you should do this or you should do that, but there was an absolute dearth of the how. So there was lots of shoulds, and this is good practice, but there was an absolute absence of the how, and how to handle the flow of a conversation, or how to deal with a session that goes flat in the middle, and the really practical stuff that coaches want to know. Well, give me some tips. And in some areas, specifically in sort of some of the formal aspects of coaching, some of the key conversations, like a chemistry conversation when we first get to know a client before we've sort of taken on, or in a contracting conversation when we set up the relationship for success. There was loads of shoulds, you must do this conversation, but because they're confidential conversations, there was nothing to help us sort of look inside as to what goes in that conversation. And coaches that I was working with were constantly asking me, can you just model what that would look like, or what phrases could we use, or how could I, if it does go flat in the middle, what could I do about the conversation? And I found myself constantly sort of repeating the same themes and the same models and the same techniques, and then I had this sort of niggling frustration. Had lots of different sort of tips and things from my own practice and from developing other coaches. So through the supervision, I get all of their challenges and questions brought to me, and we sort of try and fix them. And then we had this wonderful session, and it was a lovely coach called Anne, who was my inspiration, and she asked a question, and she was furiously scribbling, and she put, I was throwing out some anecdotes and some tips, and she had her head down and she was furiously scribbling, and she said, Jane, I can't write fast enough to capture all these things. Please, can you write a book of your stuff for other coaches? And I thought, well, yeah, I could, because that's the logical thing to do. And I hadn't really considered it before, but once the seed was planted and I watered it a little bit, it grew into an idea, and Crosswind was born.
That's a lovely story, and it's nice to kind of be asked in a way to share your ideas and thoughts with people. One of the things that struck me as soon as I opened the book actually was one of the first little sort of cloud pictures. Coaching is a contact sport. And I really liked that, just as a quick snippet, because contact and connection is kind of what coaching is about. Yeah, that was my sort of the first thing that hit me when I opened the book. But actually, the book is divided into three parts. The first part being about the conversation, the second being you've titled the big picture, and the third then is references and resources where you can look further. That's probably self-explanatory, but perhaps you could take us through your thinking in terms of the two parts, the first two parts.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that the illustrations and the little clouds were the nuggets that we just wanted to throw out there. And I worked with a fabulous illustrator, Natalie, who I've worked with for many years, and I would just give her a concept or a metaphor and she would illustrate it. And the concept of the different parts, Ruth, was really, I wanted to create a book for what I call every coach. So some would be, learning coaches, developing student coaches, others would be experienced coaches. And when we're talking about coaching, so much of the learning material that's out there is around the kind of, this is what you should do, as I've already referenced. So part one was based on the top questions I'm asked about stuff that happens in the micro, in the conversation between coach and coachee. I hate that word, but it's the word we use, and client, shall we say. So I took top 10 questions that I'm asked and I broke them down, and 6 of them sat within the micro conversation. So the way that we're conversing and the things that, how do I, what should I, what can I do when this happens? And I answered each question with a chapter and hopefully with a metaphor that worked. And then part 2 was about, okay, for the coaches who are doing what we would call formal assignments, either working as internal coaches or external coaches, where they're doing a series with a client, there are, if you like, 4 key conversations or specific purpose meetings that we have with those clients: a chemistry, a contracting, a midpoint review, and a closing. And each of those has a structure and a nuance and a subtlety to it that, we do each of those less frequently than the coaching conversations, but actually we need to be really seamless and fluent and need to know what we're doing in each of those key conversations. So, and then part 3 was, as you say, references and resources to sort of expand. And when we put the format together, I have to say I was a bit of a nightmare for the editors, because they had never worked. It was a learning curve all round. They had never worked with someone on an illustrated book. And through my many years of developing training materials for my courses, I see everything as a double page spread. So when I was designing the book, it wasn't a case of bashing out all the words and then dropping stuff in. It was a case of, what do I want to be on this double page spread? What are the key points that we want highlighted and pulled out, and what illustrations are we going to use? So it was a design-led conversation with the book, and that probably made it so much harder for the editors. I think we made it harder all round, but actually somehow it came together and it worked okay.
Yeah, actually, I would describe it as a visual textbook, if there is such a thing. But yes, it does. It works very well. And actually, that brings me to my next question. I work in corporate world. I'm a CTO in an insurance company. So how is this transposable to somebody like me who wants to introduce a coaching culture into my organization?
So coaching culture is an interesting one, Ruth, because there's a number of different sort of steps towards a coaching culture, as we know. And one of the key things about in that journey is, how do we know when we've got a coaching culture? Well, it's my kind of definition is when every conversation is led by the ask rather than the give, at all levels in every conversation, including our conversations with clients, with customers, and those relationships. So finding out what they want and then tailoring to it. So it's the first 6 chapters of the book are for absolutely anyone who wants to use a coaching style and is trying to use a coaching style in their conversations. So managers who coach, leaders who coach, etc. The part 2 is more for your internal pools of coaches who may be doing it in a more formal way. But I have a model which is sort of 7 steps to a coaching culture, and one of those steps which makes it really embed is having coaching happening regularly and that's accessible around an organization in a formal way, as well as line managers using coaching as leadership style. So long answer to a really great question.
Yeah, no, I do get that though. So questions asking, it's a kind of challenge as well, isn't it? It stretches the coachee or the thinker, as I like to think of them. And there is one quote actually I pulled it out from the book, which was, oh, the greatest help you can give is not to give. Yeah. Which I think is,
and that's the hardest thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not give advice.
And for individuals to move. Yeah, and for individuals who are used to, so line managers, leaders, etc., have been promoted, been given stripes on their arms for giving information, for having the answers, and for solving problems. And the biggest challenge always for people moving from a give to an ask style, so towards a coaching style, is to stop that solutionizing and to zip it and sit on your hands, which is an uncomfortable place to be, and ask rather than,
Lovely. Yes, that's I see that where I'm, where I work, coming from the corporate. I have a coaching qualification myself as well, although not planning to use it just yet, other than in corporate world. So just moving on then, and conscious of time, if there was one message that you wanted people to pick up from this book, what do you think that would be?
So that's a really interesting question. So I think for coaches, it would be always do it in your own style. Don't model someone else. Find your own ways of facilitating. There's no such thing as the right question in any given situation. There will be 1,000 really great, powerful questions. So don't stop the questioning looking for the right one. Just ask. And I have a vision for the world, Ruth, which is for corporate world, which is, if we could just dial up the ask by one more ask a day from every leader, what a difference it would make. And it's the confidence to ask rather than give.
Wow, yeah, that's actually really, really powerful. So in relation to that, one of the questions that you pose, or in the first part of the book, one of the questions that coaches ask is, what if I don't have any, I can't think of any questions? And you state in that section, you kind of suggest that actually we've been asking questions since we were tiny tots. We have all the experience of asking questions that we could possibly need, and something will come, I guess, is kind of what you're saying there. I think that actually you don't need to rack your brains constantly. You don't need to stop listening to try and think of a question, because the question will form. At least I think that's what you were saying.
Exactly. And and a couple of points on that, Ruth. If you can see with a learner coach, when they've come up with their next question, it's almost tattooed on their forehead, the relief of, oh, I've got my next question lined up. But by the time, I always say, are you listening or waiting to speak? Because you can see them then waiting to speak and put their great question in. And by the time that happens, the conversation's moved on and it's going to come in and be slightly disconnected. So I think it's the confidence to just listen. And if you're really, really, really stuck and can't come up with, oh my goodness, I don't know where I'm going to go, there's always the 4 directions of questions. that have no content. Agile questioning model will get you out of a hole. It's what I call your get out of jail card. Brilliant model, originally developed by Peter Hill. And we've put a version of that in the references in part 3 of the book. So there's always 4 directions of questions we can go in, and it is wherever we are in a conversation, there is a question available to us. But it will come if we listen, is my view.
Yeah, and actually, in terms of what you've put in the book for helpful things like that, there are quite a lot of models that are just good practical help to coaches, and in my case, corporate people wanting to do coach or introduce coaching to the culture. All great. So my next question then is there something I haven't asked you that you would like me to have asked?
Oh, no, I think, but if I had one ask, because I'm all about the ask, it would be, you know, for coaches who are interested, just have a little look at the book. If you've read the book, please, please, please use the QR code, because we stuck this really nifty QR code on the inside cover of the book, which is capturing questions. So this will, I covered and answered the top 10 questions that I've been asked about how do I, what could I, what should I? And we are now capturing more questions for follow-ups and meet the author sessions and discussions. So if you've read the book, if you've dipped in and you've got a question that's not been answered there, please, please, please use the QR code. That will feed us more questions, and then we'll answer the next ones in different ways, in different forums.
Oh, marvelous. So not just visual text, but interactive as well. What more could you ask?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Jane. Finally, then, if people are interested, other than the QR, if people are interested and would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So I'm really accessible, either through LinkedIn. Always love having chats, conversations with people about anything to do with coaching, or via my business website, which is Portfolio. So you'll find the details. If you just Google Jane Harder's Portfolio, you'll find my website and contact me there. As I said, always love to have conversations with coaching, about coaching, with coaches. Anything to do with coaching, it's my heart space. It's where I love to be. So please get in touch.
Thank you so much for sharing. I have to say the website's really good as well. I enjoyed exploring that. Yes, once again, thank you, Jane, author of our February book of the month, Coaching the Crosswind. I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you'll be encouraged to read it from this conversation. And Jane, thank you very much for your time and for your book, which is great.
Thanks.